There's a lot to talk about for what the Browns have been first 2 weeks and what they put together on film the first 2 weeks. And I think one of the most interesting talking points is obviously people want to talk about the defense, but I think third down, something that's interesting to talk about. I think some of the play calling is interesting to talk about. And I felt like one of the best people to bring on is one of the best people in the Browns community when it comes to film breakdowns, when it comes to all of the higher level stuff that my brain just isn't at right now. Jake Burns from Browns OBR. Jake, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm great, man. Don't discredit yourself. Your mind's there. Stop that stuff.
Well, the one of the things I think is interesting, right, is
Mhm.
third down with this defense. And I tried to rewatch this game before you got on, and I think it's weird, right? Because it's not necessarily a case of a ton of busted coverages there. It seems like, to me at least, from just a cursory look at it, a lot of issues on third downs just because the offense knows exactly where everybody's going to be at, knows exactly what to call because they're not really disguising things well. Is that what you're seeing there on third down being the issue, or is there more to it?
No, it's pretty simple, right? They're not blitzing very much at all. I don't have the data on that yet. I haven't finished my calculation on it, but they're not blitzing much, which when you're not blitzing much means that you need to be able to be deceptive in coverage, right? Because I tried to emulate this on my podcast that went up last night about the game. Like you can have six Deion Sanders in coverage, but if teams know exactly where your players are going to be a majority of the time, there's no confusion. So we all want to have this question like, why can't they get pressure on the quarterback? Why can't they sack? Why can't they produce some sacks, turn these pressures into sacks, right? Like the big issue here is they're not confusing anybody on the offensive side. That's the OC or the quarterback. So they definitely have a great idea of where they're going the ball pre-snap to post. So the
Mhm.
ball's out quick, right? Like that's the problem. If the ball's out quick, you're never going to get pressures. And for a majority of the situations, you're going to find that there's a lot of first downs that end up happening. So what's going on is they need to find a way to confuse quarterbacks off their first read. If they can get quarterbacks off their first read and make them hold on to the football a little bit longer, then they'll be able to find some pressures, find some sacks. That's the stuff they need to create negative plays on third down. Because right now there's no denying that every single quarterback. I mean, they've really faced three quarterbacks, but there's no confusion pre-snap to post-snap. So, in my opinion, a big part of the issue here is quarterbacks know where they're going with the football almost right away. There's no confusion or coverage alterations pre-snap to post-snap. What you see is what you get. They're not going open coverage to closed or vice versa, closed to open. And I think anybody can really deduce that most of these throws, these decisions on third downs are being made without much stress involved. You mix that in with rush lane discipline issues where they're letting quarterbacks slide vertical and slide horizontal and get out of pockets. That's creating more throwing situations, or like we saw week one with Pat Mahomes, situations on 3rd and 7 where the quarterback can get out and get loose for 8 yards on a scramble. So, yeah, you're getting you need a little mix of everything. But as they grow more comfortable together, you need to see them becoming more deceptive in their approach and confusing quarterbacks because right now, all of them have a great feel for where they're going with the ball, and most of the two OCs that they have faced obviously have a pretty good third down plan that's coming to fruition.
Yeah, and I'm interested to know just how much of these issues on third down are going to be kind of fixable going forward. Just because, for me at least, I at least saw that a lot of the secondary was hurt during the preseason. They weren't really getting a ton of snaps together, whether it was in preseason games, and they weren't even getting snaps together in practice. Does that have something to do with the lack of disguises and the lack of, well, with them just pretty much going base out there? Is that have something to do with it? Jim not having a lot of comfort with getting a little bit more fancy with some of these packages here on third down.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely contributes, right? If they don't have, we all know they brought in a bunch of new faces anyway, right? Like we know that, but they also don't get all of those guys together in the preseason and training camp because obviously injuries, a bunch of hamstrings that happen. That means you go into, and that was one of the more interesting things I wanted to track was they could go into week one with this highly deceptive plan that they could put out in the field. Maybe nobody's seen it. There was a lot of that because the Browns were the single most basic coverage team in the preseason. When they looked at it, Pro Football Focus tracked that they did not do any alterations and they showed very little movement differentiating between pre to post. They were like the most basic preseason defense. So I'm like, okay, does Joe Woods have a bunch of tricks up his sleeve, or is he trying to be basic because they got a bunch of new personnel? Which I think we can now look at it and say, hopefully he's being basic because of the new personnel, and they don't want to give up chunk plays. There's no doubt that Joe Woods is an eliminate big plays type of DC. They funnel and try to take away all the seams. They try to take away any deep shot passing, discourage that, they'll quintessentially be a bend but don't break style, right? They'll give up some quick throws. They'll give up curl, any sort of curl stick window. They'll allow you to throw those, but you got to make, like, they want to see you put together 10, 12 play drives. The problem is that you can do that, right? Most quarterbacks decipher things well enough, and teams are putting themselves in the right positions according to third and whatever the distance is that they can take advantage of that. So last year, I think it was pretty easy to say, Quincy, that they did not have the personnel to get creative. This year, they do have the personnel to get creative. So we're just sort of waiting. What I talked about yesterday is it's week 2. It's a marathon. There are 17 weeks in this whole process. So if we're having the same conversation about week 10 or 11, it's different. It's week 2. They now have a bunch of their pieces back. I think they got really creative in how they used Ronnie Harrison and Grant Delpit interchangeably. They brought Ronnie down in the box a lot, gave Grant a few slot snaps, gave Grant some box snaps too. They used Ronnie as a nickel backer. They're getting creative there, but then they need everybody to get on the same page to feel comfortable with what they're doing. And some of it too is, they need to give some faith to these guys. I think there's a part of that where guys need to feel like they're believed in. And if they feel like the baby stuff they're babying them through this process, there's some of that. The guys don't take ownership to the concept because, there's an interesting quote. I wrote up Grant Delpit this morning. I took a look at about 7 of his plays, and on the sack play that happened there, and we all witnessed it, the sack fumble he forced on that final Texans drive. Myles Garrett was talking about how he wishes he was closer to the play. He said, I had dropped into coverage. I don't know why that was the case, but they dropped me into coverage. And it's like, you don't really want to read that because that's a disconnect between what your DC's doing and what some of your players believe is the right thing to be doing. So I'm not sure, you got like the 3 worst graded players on Sunday were Troy Hill, Denzel, and John Johnson. And it's like, those guys are good. We know that. We've seen them play really well here or other places. So there's got to be some disconnect going on, in my opinion, just as an outsider looking in. And this is somewhat conjecture, but to me, it feels like there's a disconnect in either what they're being taught to do and what they're producing, or what the players believe is being put in front of them and actually going out and thinking that what's being asked of them is the best way to win a football game on Sunday. So we'll see. For now, they're 1-1. It's not the end of the world. There's plenty of time to fix and get deceptive and get creative, but we need to see it in action because Justin Fields comes in to Cleveland, and we know he can use the legs a little bit, and then they're going to run into Kyler and Herbert before too long too, and we know those guys can light the scoreboard up. So it's going to get real challenging real quick for this Browns defense.
Yeah, there needs to be some adjustments made because it's just not working right now, at least on third down in these certain things. But one of the things I saw was kind of a highlight for this defense, and I think offensively too, were the first-year guys, right? I think JOK, he had a solid day out there. He was really good on kick coverage. And then there is Grant Delpit, who I felt like had a pretty good game. And then we know Demetric Felton stepped in. I think you pointed out on Twitter, had a ridiculous 99 Pro Football Focus grade and three.
Never seen that
snaps
before.
or something.
Never seen that. Yeah.
It was,
let's talk about those, man.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought Grant did a good job. I'm sure you did too. He made those flash plays. We saw him make a nice play on it's unfortunate because I had tweeted out, I have impeccable bad time. Well, it's not bad, but I had tweeted out the Browns have no sacks today, right? And then they get a sack the very next play. They did not give Grant credit on that sack on a tackle for loss he had on Davis Mills there, where it was a broken play, but it was a nice reaction play, nice effort. He made a couple nice pursuit run plays. He had a lateral run stop I really liked from the free safety position. I posted a couple clips in that article of him coming downhill, making plays in the run game near the line of scrimmage. Those things you love to see. He did get caught in coverage one time. Davis Mills busted out to the right of the pocket, gave a pump fake on a deep over when Grant had come down to play cover 3 hook, and Grant bit on the pump fake, and then it opened up the receiver behind him on a 35-yard gain. But I thought he was pretty good for a debut. I thought he looked twitchy. I thought he looked like a guy comfortable in his ability to cut, right? And when you're coming back from an Achilles, you just want those guys to look comfortable. And I thought he looked really comfortable. Demetric Felton, look, man, that dude's pretty good. He's
Yeah.
like, I just think he's like a Duke Johnson to me. Like, he's not a burner, but he will make you miss in a phone booth. I think he's got that ability to make you miss in tight areas and has good short area quickness. Like I said, I don't think he's like a 4-4 run away from you type of guy, but as far as like making you miss in tight spaces, that stop spin move was phenomenal. As we saw on that little quick screen touchdown run, what ends up being a touchdown catch. And then that long drawn out orbit motion catch out on the sideline where he made multiple people miss for an 18-yard gain too. Just phenomenal, because those are plays you don't expect to go for maybe more than 4 or 5. And when you can turn those into those huge net positives, helps your team so much. So, if the Browns are going to be down Jarvis Landry, which it looks like with the sprained MCL, it's been rumored, you're going to miss him for 2 to 4 weeks, maybe a fuzz longer, but you need a guy that can sort of do some of those things. He's not a tough catch guy like Jarvis is. He can't recreate that, but he can definitely recreate some of the catch the football shallow, make people miss, turn 3-yard gains into 7, 8, 9, 10 plus yard gains. So that part of it can be nice for him. They can get real creative with him. Not that you can just replace Jarvis and all of the aspects of what Jarvis does for your offense. I don't think it's hand in glove, but there are some skill sets that you can replace, and it kind of takes everybody stepping up, right? Like, that's the thing about even Odell last year is you can't replace Odell with one person. There is no 1-for-1, but if you can get 3 guys to replicate what he does well and use them in those positions, you think you can get away with that. And I think there's some of that they can do here because of the ability Felton gives you in some of the short area passing game stuff that Jarvis thrives in. And then you're right about JOK. I posted a clip on him this morning. Really, really nice avoidance in the box, making a tackle. He plays in space well. He's just going to keep getting more comfortable. I really like him, man. I think he's rangy. He's in the right spot more often than not. And as we know, with the stress they put on their linebackers, it's a tough spot to come in and play for Cleveland right away. So I'm pleased with his development. I think he's taken the right steps, and it'll get to the point that he's an every down backer for him. But right now they're being very careful with him, keeping him out of base, only really keeping him on the field in nickel, and sort of allowing him to play with speed in situations where they need speed on the field at that position. So I like it. And I actually really like their plan with him early on. The good thing is Mac played much better in week 2. Malcolm Smith played his best game of the year, obviously only 2 games in, but far better game this week than last week. And then I thought Taki again, he kind of just keeps making plays when he finds the field. So I think he's made some nice strides there.
Yeah, and the last thing I'm gonna ask you about is the offense. Now with Jarvis being out, it's rumored that Odell might come back this week, but we're not 100% sure on that one either. And with Baker, I know the completion percentage is really good. I feel like I've been one of the people who've been saying I think that he's not taking as many shots as he did at the end of last season. I don't know if that's game plan. I think some of that was game plan this week where he just had a hurt shoulder and they didn't want to see him get hit and hold the ball there. But another part of it has been, Schwartz. There has been some times where Schwartz has looked great. There have been some times where you can see the trust might be affected with Baker on knowing where Schwartz is going to be on a couple of routes. There was an interception this week. There was the one ball at the end of the first half last week where Schwartz just wasn't where he was supposed to be there. So there's a potential issue there. And then Peoples-Jones, for a guy who had a hot camp, just hasn't really started this season off on the way that we wanted him to, despite him having a little bit more opportunity than we thought he would coming into this season. So with the young wide receivers having to take more of a role within the next couple of weeks here with Jarvis being out, do you think that there's an issue there when it comes to support, or do you think there's something going to be able to figure out relatively soon?
Well, it's a good question. You certainly aren't as good without 13 and 80, right? Like, I think those guys are obviously your frontline dudes who can perform best for you. We'll see if Odell plays. It seems like the target was always week 3, but he's got to feel right. He's got to go through practice and be tackled and make sure he feels comfortable. We'll see. I don't, until they say he's playing, I'm not going to count that he's playing, if that makes sense. So, as far as replicating Jarvis, like I said, you can do that with a mixture of people. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones had some nice route separation. He had a good catch. It's just that Justin Reed got his helmet perfectly on the football to separate that thing from him. Rashard Higgins continues to just be in the right place at the right time when they need him to be in certain spots. As far as I thought week 1, they pushed the ball down the field. I think they had 4 throws of over 30 yards week 1, which is a good number. It's a really good number. They didn't throw this one downfield. And now I think initially, Quincy, I thought it was because of the shoulder, but because if I just posted a photo on Twitter this morning of the first drive, Conklin gave up a sack that ended the drive. There was a little nod post that Anthony Schwartz was on that was wide open, and Baker was stepping up to throw it, and it would have been a deep shot that could have been a big touchdown play, but he didn't get enough time to throw it. So I think they wanted to, but they also, after the game, I heard Stefanski say we wanted to complete 80% of our passes, and anytime your goal in a game is to complete 80% of your throws, you're probably looking at a lot of short throw designs, which I think they did. And, when you mix in Baker doing what he did, he's got to stop trying to tackle people, man. When you mix in, it's just silly. When you mix in the shoulder issue he had with what seems like a game plan that was based on picking apart shallow to intermediate parts of Houston's defense, I don't think they were really intending to push the ball. They play a tricky cover two. It's Lovie Smith, man. He loves to play that cover two and kind of bait you into downfield throws. And I thought Baker did a nice job of not being baited into some downfield throws he could have made mistakes on. So, and then we saw Trevor Lawrence get trapped on 3 of those with interceptions last week. So I thought Baker played pretty well for the most part. Schwartz, you're right. He's got to continue to keep growing. I thought they missed a touchdown ball in this one. Like I mentioned, they couldn't get it off. And I thought, obviously, he stopped on that ball, that deep dig that he ran. I don't know why. I don't know if he saw the safety out of the corner of his eye and got scared. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, you got to make big boy catches in the NFL every now and again, and you're going to get popped when you catch it. So you got to certainly keep running to take care of your quarterback too. It's a mixture there. But yeah, I'm not panicked about it. And the reason I'm not totally panicked about it is because Odell went out last year and we had to see Donovan Peoples-Jones get real experience, and we know Rashard Higgins can handle the experience. They're going to keep trying to get Schwartz in advantageous situations and let him help him out. And two, I think I had noted it, I don't have my notes right in front of me, but they use a high volume of 13 personnel, and they love getting all 3 tight ends on the field, and not just boxing those tight ends up and putting them on the line of scrimmage, but putting them in empty. I think they ran 19% of plays from 13 personnel. That's 1 wide receiver, 1 back, 3 tight ends. And I believe on 8 of those 19% of those plays, they were in empty. So, I mean, that's not a fear of using those tight ends as wide receivers. We've seen them be aggressive with Njoku here early in the season. Thought Hooper and Bryant played much better in this past game. I think they were up over 12 targets between the 3 of them. So, the thing about Kevin Stefanski and this group, Quincy, is that they're malleable in their approach. One game they can use heavy tight end personnel. The next game it feels like they can go to more wide receiver base sets and be okay. They need Odell back. They need Jarvis back if they're going to go the places we hope they can go. But I think like with the Chicago game, traveling to Minnesota, we know that the Cardinals can produce some holes, and the Chargers are okay defensively too. I'm not going to lose any like 4-week window type of sleep over this. I think they can get by, but they definitely need their dudes to be healthy for the rest of the year.
Definitely, Jake. Thank you for coming on. Anything else you want to, well, where can they find you if they want to know what else that you have to say about this game?
Yeah, find us at the OBR. A lot of work up there. We do I do all 22 notes over the next 2 days, offense, defense, anything I scout up, anything I notice, takeaways, that's there. You can find me on Twitter at Jake_Burns18, and the OBR Film Breakdown podcast, which is up in every single day of the week. You can find that on Spotify, Apple, all that junk. So yeah, thanks, man. Always appreciate coming on your show, man. Mad respect. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you on, man. But thank you for coming on. And again, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day and have a good night.